Well, I've just finished the harvest today. It's the middle of May. We're right in the middle of the hunger gap, so the hunger gap generally starts about towards the end of April and sort of runs to the beginning of June. It's a time when, as a home gardener, it's pretty tricky to have an abundance of food. But I think I've got it licked, and I wanted to talk today about the harvest that we've just done and all the sort of tips and tricks, overview really of the tips and tricks that we've used and timings and things like that to get a nice early harvest. And part of it needs a greenhouse or a polytunnel or something like that. It's easier if you can keep things frost free, but it's not necessary because you could use fleece as well. It's not particularly onerous in terms of timescales either. I tend to spend over winter probably 5 or 6 hours a week gardening, something like that. And now it's up to sort of 10, 11, 12, something like that, just while we get everything planted. Anyway, I'm going to go and take you around the harvest table and talk everything through. One of the techniques, though, that I don't explain in the video is how I do things like cauliflowers and calabrese and things like that. So I start them in September, early October, in just a little pot like this, and I leave them in these pots until about February time. Sometimes I'll pot them on if they're getting bigger, but ideally keep them frost free, as I say, until about February, and then I plant them out underneath my low tunnels on the allotment. And the low tunnels over winter, well, autumn and winter, will have had spinach in them, lettuce in them, beet leaves in them, something like that. And I will, if it's spinach, for example, I'll just take out 4 spinach plants out of, say, 30, and I'll pot that pot with a cauliflower in it in the place of 1 spinach plant. And I'll just leave that growing in the ground with the spinach all the way through, say I did it in January, all the way through January and early February. And then I'll start progressively clearing spinach plants out that. And then by about the middle of March, I'll have taken all the spinach out and the cauliflowers will be the only thing that's left. And the beauty of that is that it doesn't take up much space. A little cauliflower like that over winter in the greenhouse or the polytunnel on a shelf doesn't take up much space at all. It doesn't take up space in the low tunnel when I need it. I need that space desperately for, say, spinach or lettuce over winter, but I don't really need it in March because I've got so much spinach growing in March. You need about 4 times as much space for spinach over winter as you do in sort of mid-spring. So let's get on. So I'll start off with the flowering brassicas. And so cauliflowers are a great one. We are just in a lull at the moment for cauliflowers, but I like to start my cauliflowers about mid-September to late September, overwinter them, and then plant them into the winter spinach beds in February. And that gives me, those are under low covers, and that gives me a nice harvest all the way through May and into early June. Winter squash, nothing fancy about that. My winter squash gets planted out in June, planted in October. Calabrese, of which we've got some side shoots here and some nice main heads here. So I tend to start this about, again, sort of late September, overwinter it in the polytunnel or the greenhouse and plant it out in February again. And then I'll do a few successions of that because obviously calabrese is faster growing than cauliflower. And as a result, it's a good idea to do some, say, like the 25th of September, some on the 5th of October, some towards the end of October, and even some in January, for example. And that gives you a nice continuous harvest of calabrese. And I tend to stop calabrese about March and then start again in May. So potatoes, they're a great big favourite for us. And so I've got little ones here. Those are probably about 75 days old. And these are maybe just a little bit older than that, maybe 90 days old. I tend to start mine in small pots in the house just to get them going quickly, and then transplant them into containers in the greenhouse. and then I'll take those containers from the greenhouse to the polytunnel, just the first few. So basically I'm just doing that, messing around for the first few batches, and then I'll just start them directly in containers in the greenhouse, and then a bit later directly in containers in the polytunnel. And now of course I'm planting all of them in the ground. So that's the potatoes. We've been harvesting potatoes now since late April. Nothing special about radishes, nothing special really about turnips, although I do just start these in modules just to give them a slightly early start, and just that means I can get these cleared by the time I'm planting my middle of March sown brassicas in the same ground. Beetroot, so these are the storage beetroot. They've been in store in damp wood chips. Start them sort of May, early June in full sun, or about a month earlier if they're going to grow in light shade. And of course they look lovely, really great condition still, but I do have lots of little beetroot. I'll talk about those in a minute. Onions, just like everybody else, start those middle of February and plant those out about early April and harvest those in August, which is a great timing really, because there's so much stuff that you can plant in August and September and even into October under cover. Elephant garlic, you'll see I've got some elephant garlic that I use as leeks at this time of year, but if you leave it in the ground until sort of June, July time, you get these nice big cloves. They store pretty well. And our actual true garlic has finished now from store, and so we're on to the green garlic, and there's the green garlic. So this is just ordinary garlic planted close together, and the beauty of it is you can use the whole stem from here down. So it's really productive, really lovely, and we'll be eating that from about middle of April to about the end of May. And then we've got the spring cabbages. I've got the world's smallest spring cabbage here. I picked this one because of slugs, and I think you can just see in there's a slug. So yeah, there was loads of slugs on this particular spring cabbage, and so I picked this one. But we've got loads of really big spring cabbages as well, of course, and they're a real staple, and they're really useful at the time when the kale's just finishing. So I've still got loads of kale here, but I've really only got 1 week of harvest off this kale, and this kale is a mix of sort of July sown kale and November sown kale that's been grown under cover. So that's a pretty good one. I quite like doing the late stuff under cover because it really means that I get probably 2 extra harvests out of the same bed by sowing it late and harvesting it now than I would do if I did it in sort of July, and then I would miss a summer crop and an autumn crop and a winter crop from the same bed. So yeah, sowing it late under cover is a great idea. Field bean tops or broad bean tops, they're the same really. They're really great, very tender, bit of a taste of broad beans, and I really like those. So yeah, they're just sown. I think mine were about sown in November and planted out sort of early December, something like that. And then I've got loads of spinach here and loads of spinach here, and none of my spinach is overwintered at this stage. We have had overwintered spinach. What I do with the overwintered spinach is I plant into it in January and February things like the calabrese and the cauliflowers. I've got some beautiful cauliflowers actually that are ready for picking now. I'll see if I can put a picture of those up. I've had some lovely cauliflowers in previous week's harvest as well. But the nice thing about that is instead of planting your cauliflowers out in say July time and then they tie up the bed all the way through summer and autumn and winter, I just have mine in small pots in the polytunnel from, as I said, a September sowing. And the lovely thing about that is you're then planting them out in January and February into your spinach beds, so you're not even sacrificing your spinach. You just take like 4 spinach plants out of a bed of say 30, and eventually when you've got way too much spinach in March, you can clear the whole spinach bed and just got your calabrese. So they're really only taking up space, significant space, in March. And of course by March you've got loads and loads of food. So I think, oh yeah, just a little bit of tatsoi. I've had tatsoi since about November, pretty much continuously, just multiple sowings in the polytunnel in this case, but you could grow it outside as well once you get to spring. This is my last succession. I think I only sowed that probably a month ago, something like that. And then I've got salad onions, loads of those. Let's see if I can get that. Lift that up, show you. So they were lovely. They were sown back in September. Getting a bit big now, to be honest, getting a little bit tough. So I'm looking forward to the ones that I sowed in January, which are coming on stream nicely now and should be ready in a week or so. And we've taken all our chard out because we planted our main crop kales in its place, but we've got beautiful beetroot leaves, so that is not a problem. Beetroot and chard being from the same family. And then what have we got down here? So carrots. So you could still be eating carrots from, say, a June sowing. They'll be a bit tough now and only suitable for cooking. These were from a November sowing in the polytunnel in containers, and we'll harvest these all the way through June. And by the end of June or middle of June, we'll have our the ones that we sowed this year ready. And then here we've got the thinnings from my elephant garlic bed. So I always over plant in the elephant garlic bed, so I've got plenty of spares. And these, as you can see, are just like a leek, and elephant garlic is effectively from the leek family. So I've got little beetroot here. I've got lots of much bigger beetroot than this from a January sowing in the polytunnel, but I'm just clearing space for tomatoes and some stuff, so I just had to take some of them out. And courgettes, these started in the house, then moved into the greenhouse and into the polytunnel now. And yeah, I've had a few weeks of harvest of courgettes. It's really nice to have courgettes at this time of year because we are running out of winter squash. I think we've only got one more in addition to the one that's on this table. So by then we'll be in courgette abundance, and so we'll not have to worry about running out of squashes. And my first cucumber, the cucumbers are running late. Normally I like to have cucumbers at the beginning of May. It just brightens up the salads a bit. And yeah, but for some reason we're only just starting, but it's not to worry. And then strawberries, it's our kind of daily strawberry harvest at the moment. And yeah, looking really nice. Actually, you know, when you add up how much it costs to buy a bowl of those strawberries like that every single day, all the way through April, and onwards obviously, that's quite a lot of money, and just that kind of pays for the heating bill in the greenhouse. And then I've got broad beans from probably back at again in November sowing, but these have been in the polytunnel in a container, and just get broad beans effectively from now through to when the main crop broad beans are ready. And then we've got sugar snap peas and Marge 2 peas. Both of those started in the house and then grown in containers in the greenhouse. And again, this is just enough peas to see us through eating fresh in salads and stir fries and things like that, until the second early peas on the allotment are ready. And that should only be 2 or 3 weeks time, and we'll be in pea abundance then. And then obviously we'll have peas continuously for quite a while. And then these are all lettuces. So got some nice lettuce mixes here. And all these lettuces I think were sown sort of January, February time. Some of them grown outside, some of them planted into gaps in the carrot bed. Some of them planted into just other little gaps and things that have opened up, but all grown, most of them grown under cover. Actually, I picked some of them from the polytunnel as well today. But pretty much all those early lettuces are finishing now. We'll be switching over to our February sown and March sown lettuces next week, I think. And that'll be nice because these are definitely coming to the end now. So that, I think, is the table. It's a pretty good harvest. as I say, for this time of year. And it only gets better really from here. Just loads and loads more fruit coming on stream. Tomatoes pretty soon. And so the tips and techniques really, it's all about starting in modules, starting in the house, using grow lights. Not for very long though. I only generally use grow lights for about 14 days for most things. And then getting in the greenhouse, keeping the greenhouse frost free for a lot of things, which is, you know, just like £1 or £2 a week, something like that. So it's pretty cheap. And then all of the kind of fruits, the tomatoes, the peppers, things like that, the cucumbers and things like that are just about to arrive. All of those require the greenhouse to be much warmer. But as I say, I'm paying the heating bill for keeping that greenhouse warm by picking early strawberries and early courgettes and things. So it works. So hope you like this quick video, and I think the best way to keep track of everything and figure out how to sort of get started with year-round gardening is to subscribe to my newsletter. You can find it at steverichards.substack.com. There's a link to it down in the description below, and it takes you through week by week all the things that I'm doing and advice, more general advice in the sorts of things that you could be doing, and you know, nice prescriptive growing guides and all the details about, you know, when to sow, when to pot on, when to plant, more importantly, where to plant, all those sorts of things. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. If you're not interested in that, just check out my ebook. All the same information's in there. It's just not structured in such a timely fashion. My name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.